and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guests today herald a shift in tone of our traditional 5e based games, bringing ideas from elsewhere, inspirations from far-reaching popular franchises, both off the grid and to the moon and back. They take us back in time where the story starts at our mortal end. We are transported to a new world, a rare gem of civilization, a seat of academia, and the heart and soul of our adventures themselves. Moving our games into a new phase of play with our free time and helping us build bonds, deal with trauma, burnout, and creating the personas we want to become are game designers, content creators, and successful Kickstarters, Kira and Derek of Magi-Knight Project. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you join me. So, first question I guess that I would definitely like to ask is, how did each of you get into tabletop role-playing games, please?
You should go first since you were younger.
All right. I was actually brought into it by my dad, who was a big second edition fan, grew up playing D&D, and he kind of introduced me to the merciless world of, Dungeons and Dragons. And our very first campaign, it was me and a bunch of friends. We were tasked to, save this town from an orc king, and we all died except for me and my pet dog. So that was my first memory of D&D. So,
so I have 4 brothers, and they all tried a bunch of different tabletop RPGs like D&D and Big Eyes Small Mouth and the Sailor Moon RPG and things like that. But I didn't really play a lot. For some reason, they just never lasted very long. So it wasn't until I married Derek that I really got into it. And we started with 3.5 D&D, and then next went to Pathfinder. And Pathfinder is really what made me love it. We played that for several years together, and then moved on to 5th edition when that came out, and then started trying other tabletop RPGs like Legend of 5 Rings and Star Wars. I don't know what the full name is. Is it just Star Wars?
Edge of the Empire.
Oh yeah, Edge of the Empire and several others. Or many others, I should say. We played like 15 different ones or something at least. So, yeah.
Wow. Strong numbers. So we sort of leapt and skipped through certain things, but how did your individual sort of introductions to the game, I suppose I should continue down that sentence, how did they turn into the Magi-Knight project, and where did that really stem from?
Yeah, that's mainly a Derek thing. So
okay, well, it initially began as wanting to create a game for Kira and our daughter to play with me, and she was interested in the fantasy world, but she was much more interested in this, the magical girl idea. And so using the Genesis system created by Fantasy Flight Games, I molded kind of the bones of Magi-Knights, and come to find that, a young girl has difficulty translating the symbols on the dice to mean something else. So she was very familiar with D&D, so she understood the D20 system. So I made the very arduous journey of converting Magi-Knights from Genesis to 5th edition. And it was just kind of out of a desire to play with my daughter and my wife and create a fun game where we could explore a new world together.
And then...
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and also we tried, when Derek was first thinking that we'd play with other people besides just us 3, not many people were familiar with Genesis either. So that was another reason he decided to switch it to 5th edition D&D, because everybody knows it. So
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So for someone that's unfamiliar, that hasn't followed you on various social medias, and that's something we'll get to very shortly, would you mind sort of giving us a bit of an introduction to what Magi-Knights is or are in that respect, and what we can expect to experience when we play the game that you have created using the 5e rule set, please?
The best pitch I can think of is it's a team-oriented game, and I think that's what we try to bring more to the table than classical D&D is. It's more about being a hero, and it's more about working with your friends to discover mysteries and stem the tide of darkness. There's a lot of social building, relationships. There's combination maneuvers where you're doing these powerful attacks in sync together. You can create formations, and we do have rules for a corruption system where if you do evil acts, things happen to your character. But I think that's the big thing that sets our game apart from classical D&D is the sense of team, of unity, and the triumph of good over evil in a modern day setting.
Yeah, I also think a big focus on the social aspects too, because you get like you can build up relationships with NPCs and your fellow players and get abilities based on that. And then also having a system where you go to school and have to interact with a lot of more varied NPCs than you normally do in the D&D setting, I think, because you don't spend as much time just in a dungeon or places you don't really meet people very often.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of the our two people who stream our game pretty frequently, that I think that's been their favorite thing is returning to the 90s and reliving this nostalgia and talking about, so what is the new movie coming out in 1996, and do we even have modems yet, internet? What? Oh, that's right, Blockbuster is still around. And so seeing all these people relive these cherished memories of the 90s is kind of fun, and also seeing them bring those memories up with a younger audience who didn't have wasn't around to physically experience those times. So it's been pretty interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sort of, you mentioned Blockbuster there, a sort of a memory from my childhood as well, sort of family trips to Blockbuster and things like that. So it sort of resonates with me in that respect. You mentioned seats of learning and sort of interacting with NPCs. So how does one go about becoming a Magi-Knight?
Oh, I think this is a Kira question.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It's actually so well, I don't know if I could tell it. You should tell it because
All right. So what happens is there are these creatures that exist that we can't see called heralds. And our main herald is Kirix, and he's the red panda you see with the horns, long tail, and wings. And anytime someone experiences what we call a near-death experience, or an NDE, Kirix stops time and offers them an ultimatum. You can forfeit your life, your future, and become a Magi-Knight to fight against the forces of evil until you fall in battle, or you can accept what fate has offered you in this moment, which is an untimely death. And so a lot of people make this arrangement not realizing what it entails with this mythical creature from another dimension called Elsewhere, rather than facing death or the afterlife or whatever is waiting for them. And they can also do this kind of devil's bargain, if you will, on behalf of a friend or family member who's dying. So we've had some people who basically trade away their future so that their siblings are no longer afflicted with an illness that's eating them away or anything like that. So that is initially how you become recruited as a Magi-Knight.
Once this recruitment happens, where does the magic happen? But how is the transformation completed, facilitated almost?
So after you decide to become a Magi-Knight, your herald, I guess in a way takes a little part of you to create a soul crystal and use the soul crystal to transform. And it can take any appearance you want. So you could have it be a necklace or a bracelet or anything like that. And then
Or a broom.
Or a mop, you mean?
A mop.
We
That's
had
right.
somebody have a mop as their soul crystal.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, and then you use that to transform, and then your armor, but not really. It's whatever kind of outfit you want. Just looks what would be matched to your character's personality or how they would see themselves as a hero. And then they also get their soul weapons. And what else should I say about it?
I think one thing that's fun is when we've been role playing through our games with some people who are kind of newer to the genre or these stories, is that there's almost like a mystical, powerful phrase that they learn in Sentai and some, magical girl shows that helps them transform. And some players take the opportunity to kind of have this internal soul-seeking journey where they try to discover what is that phrase that will inspire me, that will, allow me to make this dramatic change from who I am to who I want to be. And once they find that key phrase, they're able to use their soul crystal to transform into these legendary heroes to solve mysteries and save others.
Amazing. And so you mentioned there or alluded to a couple, but what were the sort of what are some touchstones that others may be familiar with, or some of the influences you really drew from to help sort of create Magi-Knights?
Big ones are Sailor Moon and Power Rangers. Mainly, well, no, because you've watched almost all the Power Rangers,
Mostly
right?
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because that's what I grew up with, and it made such a influence on me as a child.
Yeah, but he's also watched almost every other Power Rangers series, so I'm sure that those were part of it too. So those are the main ones, but we've been watching some other magical girl shows recently to try to get more inspiration. Like, what is it? Magical Girl what's the full name? I always
Magical
forget.
Girl Lyrical Monologue?
Yes. and
Yuki Yuna as a hero?
Yeah, and then you always liked Madoka too.
Yeah, Madoka. I think a lot of people will almost immediately be like, oh, this reminds me of Madoka Magica. And while it is an influence, I think it's primarily our influences are Sailor Moon and Power Rangers. There is kind of this dark feel to it, but the dark feel kind of concept of elsewhere and these creatures actually takes a lot of its growth from Call of Cthulhu and Lovecraftian lore.
Okay. So if someone was, I mentioned inspiration, so if someone was inspired to go and pick this up or to sort of follow you as content creators and game designers, where could we go to find you online primarily?
We're on all the main social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and we also have Discord, which is where we're most active, really, since a lot of our followers join that server and interact with us there. And then we have a YouTube channel. I haven't been able to post on it since the Kickstarter, but we plan to release more videos later when we have time to make like character creation tutorials and things like that.
Yeah, once the rules are more finalized and kind of, this is the final iteration, we're definitely going to be making more tutorial videos. As it stands, we've gone through already a lot of different versions, upgrading and changing, getting feedback on our Discord server, what people don't like or what's not clear. And we've been taking that feedback to heart and making those adjustments. So definitely we'll be making more videos. And in the future, we'll also have our game available on Foundry. And so we will be streaming some gameplay of the first episode that Kira wrote called
An Echo from the Stars.
Yeah. And we'll be playing through that on Foundry so people can see what it's like firsthand.
Yeah, no, that sounds really great. And just so I can make sure that the right handle, as it were, is put in the description below this podcast, what's your, say, Twitter handle or Instagram handle so people can just click on the links below and follow to support you in that way?
Yes, I believe they're both just Magi_Knights. Let me double check to make sure they're the same.
Honestly, if you even Google Magi-Knights,
Yes.
and then in Twitter, or in Google, sorry, it'll come up. But yeah,
Yes.
it does have an underscore for our Twitter.
Yeah, and for Instagram as well.
Perfect. Right. Yeah, go on. Sorry. Well, I will make sure that those links are put in the description below this podcast. So please, if you're listening and inspired, and I'm sure there's definitely more to come that will keep you engaged and inspired, please scroll down, follow those links, and support the Magi-Knights project or the Magi-Knights project. And you mentioned there the Kickstarter. So what was it like taking your idea, your inspirations, your hard work and graft from converting the system from Genesis to the 5e rule set and then putting it up on Kickstarter? What's that process been like?
You can tell the conversion part. I'll tell the Kickstarter part.
It was a bit unexpected. Originally, like I said, this was kind of just something I was doing in my pastime for, Kira and our daughter. But eventually, as I worked to convert it, and it was so much work, but it was a work of passion. I kind of thought, well, this is interesting. I could, throw it up on TTRPG and just sell it for $5 or something, and maybe get something for my hard work. But it was actually my dad who looked at all the rules and had seen all the work that had gone into it. And he was like, you absolutely need to take this to Kickstarter. And at first I kind of looked at him in disbelief and I was like, nah, I don't think this is Kickstarter material. But thankfully I listened to him and apparently it is. So we're very grateful for all of our fans and, those who invested in us and helped us achieve our goals so quickly. So,
Yeah. And Kickstarters are a lot of work for anyone who hasn't run one before. And then I had no idea what we were getting into when we first started until I started listening to podcasts about people who had run Kickstarters and had experience with it. And I learned a lot from that. And then learning how to run a business too. And finding artists for, because we needed so many artists to get all the artwork done in a certain amount of time after having the funds for it. All of that has been a huge learning experience, but it's easier now than it was, at least. And it was really fun, though, to see so many people excited about it, and we were amazed by how much support we got on Kickstarter too.
yeah, it's
we
been
were really
incredible.
touched by it. Yeah.
I mean, the artwork in the book, I've looked at it on drive-through. Again, link will be in the description down below, and on the Kickstarter page, and sort of your various other places where the artwork is posted. I think it's beautiful. I think it's fantastic artwork. So I'm really glad that you followed through and made sure you got the artwork to match the style of this game, because it's a perfect synergy of idea and conception.
Well, we love to hear that, especially because the best is yet to come.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's only a small portion of it.
It's a very small portion. We commissioned with this successful Kickstarter. We got so much more, and admittedly, if we had blown the goal out of the water, we could have gotten something like a drawing for every single monster, which I would have loved. But for this first edition, I think we're both very happy where it's at. All the creatures we've created, all the Magi-Knights that we've designed. It's just turned out really well, and people love the artwork that they've seen off the Kickstarter. Just wait till you get your hands on the actual PDF in the book. You'll be very pleasantly surprised.
Amazing. Well, that naturally leads me to my next question. The art, and you mentioning wanting to have more of it. Do you each have a favorite piece of art, or maybe a favorite mechanic, or a favorite passage in the book that sort of resonates with you more than the rest of the book? I know it's like picking favorites, but that's what I'm here to do.
Wow.
You go first.
I needed a moment to think about that.
I could say my favorite artwork, but I'd have to think about my favorite mechanic, because there's a lot I like.
It's not necessarily a list. It's just something that you really, the one thing that you really love about the product you've created for us to enjoy.
Oh, okay. Well, I've mainly been the one in charge of going back and forth with the artists to let them know what we want, and it's been really fun to create that way, and so and bring our ideas to life. And so I think my favorite artwork would be, which maybe is my favorite mechanic too, so maybe that's part of why it fits so well with me. But on what's the name of the chapter? Is it actually bonds? Oh, forming bonds.
Mm-hmm.
The chapter called Forming Bonds is about all the relationships that you can form with NPCs and with your fellow players. And my favorite thing about it is that you can have families in the game, so you can like have a relationship with your mom and dad as well as your friends at school. And because that's not something you really do in D&D very often, because you usually are traveling around and don't really have time for your family very much. And so my favorite artwork is the one that we have for that chapter, which actually we haven't shared anywhere yet, but it's just showing the two characters that, I mean, Derek and I created all 6 of them, but the 2 that were most based on us, I guess is the best way to say it. Verity and Dan. It's just a picture of them sitting together, and Dan's holding his little Game Boy, and it's really cute, and I love it. So,
As for me, my favorite artwork, I'm gonna have to put up 2 for each. So we haven't showed either one of these yet, but I'm very excited. The Marred King, he is our major corrupt Magi-Knight. He's kind of like the big head honcho of all the corrupted Magi-Knights, and his design was just so fun to create. I'm very excited to show him off, show more of his artwork off, and you get this feeling of, yeah, there was once a noble soul behind this, plate mail clad armor, but there's an art of mystery about him that I just love. And then number 2 would be a monster we haven't shown that I just had so much fun designing, called the
is it the Shrieking Canticula?
not the Shrinking Canticula, the one we just renamed, the one who's not winning our poll right now.
Oh, so it's shown in the polls then.
Yeah.
The Skinwalker?
Yes, the Reaping Skinwalker.
Yeah.
We recently changed his name because we had 2 different iterations, but I had this just dream, almost like visage of this massive creature with enormous moose antlers and rings attached to its hooks on the horns. And then it would pull these bags of people behind it, the victims that it had captured. And so the drawing for that turned out amazingly well, super horrifying and perfect. So definitely very excited. It's super creepy.
I have to agree, it sounds it. Yeah, it certainly sounds it.
And my 2 favorite mechanics, I think the first one is definitely going to be the very first mechanic that's introduced. It's actually the way you generate characteristics, and we call it observing fate's influence. And it's creating your stats. I love rolling stats. I love rolling for stats in D&D, but it was it could swing your game so far either way, and it would create sometimes some animosity and bitterness between your players. One player would roll extremely well, and it would just kind of upset the balance of the game, and another player felt worthless because they had rolled maybe average at best. And so in our game, everybody rolls their stats as a team, and they're able to move these stats around to fit their player archetype, but you do generate the entire array as a team. And I think that's one of my favorite mechanics is from step 1, you get the sense that this is a team game, and not one of you is necessarily stronger than the other. And even if they are, it's only in different aspects, So I think that's huge for me. And then
yeah, I like that too.
The other one was the phases. A lot of people have some difficulties adjusting to game phases, that we call them, and kind of episodic structure. Because as I was researching and dwelling on these shows that inspired me, like Sailor Moon and Power Rangers, these Saturday morning cartoons, quote unquote, there is like an episodic structure to their days. And so and just like our lives, so we did, put those into the game. You have a school phase, you wake up, you go to school, then you have a lunch phase, and then after school you have free time. After free time is investigation, and then it's time to go out on patrol, and then it's time to go to sleep. So we broke all those down into phases, and I think it's just really rewarding and really fun to kind of chunk out your days, and also to be able to be like, well, this is a perfect stopping point because we just switched to the next phase. So
yeah, no, the phases thing, reading through, it took me a moment to get it, because I was like, well, that looks like a school sort of program almost. And I was like, oh, but yes, now I see, because then I linked it back to Frostpeak and Lapis High and Black Moat Union. I thought, well, it all ties in. Nothing sort of stands apart. That it all sort of ties and belongs. And when I sort of that latched in, I was like, yeah, now this flows in my mind. Now I can see where you're coming from with this. And you've got other mechanics, should we say, the solar eclipse chart. Soul eclipse chart, and things like for corruption and stress. So what's it been like sort of bringing those aspects in, which are very, very iconic, if not always clearly represented in the shows and the stories that you reference as influences, but bringing them into the system where 5e doesn't always have them there for us to engage with?
yeah, stress was the first big one I wanted to introduce, and they have a similar concept in Genesis, but I wanted to take it a step further and make it more felt like Cthulhu style, where it was like the stress of your character, your mental capacities. And that's kind of, as we've gone through the many iterations, that's where we've ended up, where stress is the detrimental buildup on your mental stats, and exhaustion is the detrimental buildup of your physical stats. And I think it's come just seamlessly into the game. Trauma was huge. That was an absolute must to get into the game, to get it right. Luckily, there's been a lot of source material and inspirations to draw from with all of that. But yeah, just everything has kind of come together. The trauma, converting trauma into corruption. When you become so desensitized to everything, you become almost willing to accept a certain level of evil around you to complete the job, so to speak. So it's just been really fun introducing these new mechanics and crystalline fracturing. How far will you push yourself? How heroic are you? Will you sacrifice yourself and perform a kind of like a heroic last stand through a soul oblation, where you become super powerful, but this is it. This is your final battle, and you better hope you win, because otherwise, what has this all been for? So
Yeah.
it's just really fun giving that kind of spotlight to the characters, the players, and allowing them to say, no, this is not where our story ends, but maybe this is where my story ends. And my friends are going to continue on, and they're going to keep their reputation level, and I'm going to make sure that they live to see tomorrow. And then also the joys of becoming what we call a new rice Magi-Knight, a newly minted Magi-Knight who needs to be trained, taught the ways of a Magi-Knight from his, veteran comrades, and building that up and all that. So everything has just been flowing together so wonderfully. So it's just been a grand experience.
And am I right in saying that sort of the opposite to this hope, this stepping on, moving forward, and things like that, is to be lost to darkness? Is that a fair sort of connection?
I think so. With the trauma, you do have to find time. You have to make time in your busy schedule with school and everything else, your investigation, to perform what we call moments of catharsis. And the more of your allies that are with you during these moments of catharsis, the easier it is for you to rid yourself of this trauma. Now, eventually, you do gain so many that it starts to make your soul track shorter and shorter, to the point where
Is it the lunar track? Is that what you're talking about?
The solar eclipse chart.
Yeah.
So it has, equal to the moon phases, there's so many lunar blips. And eventually those lunar blips start disappearing little by little. And eventually, I think almost every Magi-Knight would either succumb to, temptation and darkness and become jaded, or they experience what we call burnout, which is just where they're just so overwhelmed with everything, and they're basically just forced into early retirement if they don't fall in combat. So, but that's what new Magi-Knights are for. Yeah, and Kyrix the Herald is, there's plenty of people that would gladly enter the service of, the Herald to get magical abilities, and so there's no short supply of potential Magi-Knights. So he's not worried.
Fair enough. So if my group and I, for example, wanted to sort of follow answer the call or accept the deal from the Herald Kyrix, for example, and say I myself wanted to be the Magic Keeper, that your game's version of a games master or MC, as it were, what advice would you give to myself and the group as such to sort of really get into and engage with the game? Just a game running tips for running Magi-Knights, please.
As the Magic Keeper or as a player?
Either or both. I'd love something to help both sides of the table. Not that they're opposed, I get that, but both roles in that respect.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because that sometimes does happen in D&D games I've seen, where the dichotomy just kind of falls apart, and it does kind of feel adversarial, which I don't believe in. But Kira, you've been a player quite often. Why don't you give them tips for that?
Okay. Well, it helps if you've seen anime, but if you haven't, really any kind of cartoons you watched as a kid have some elements of what's in Magi-Knights. But if you just kind of get yourself in that mindset, like I'm one of these kids that are stopping the evil forces in their city, and just
I think the big thing is enjoying the time solving the mysteries.
yeah, I love mysteries, and they're super fun in this game. Like figuring out what's going on, because there are huge problems that affect your time at school and in the city and people in your community. So you can really investigate problems everywhere, both at school and at home. So it just drives you to want to find out what's going on and help stop whatever's happening.
Okay. And then for the Magic Keeper, please, Derek.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is you are the storyteller, but I have always wondered why D&D has never really incorporated the DM into his own game. We have a lot of people, and myself very much included, in the forever DM syndrome. That's me to a T. I'm a forever DM, but I've always had a vested interest in my party, and seeing them succeed, and I want to push them to their breaking point. To have them, half the team is unconscious, but we pulled it through the fire. We have prevailed against all odds. That's my favorite thing with storytelling, and so Magi-Knights allows me to do that by introducing the DM NPC, so to speak, which is the Herald, and the Herald is the player's confidant. He is their, depending on the type of Herald you are, but whether he's silent or not, he's their cheerleader, and he has this all-knowing capacity to assist them, but he's bound by these rules of the Herald. And so it's really fun to see players interact with your Herald. And by doing so, by including the DM or the Magic Keeper as a part of this group, it allows them to feel like they are a part of this group. Like they do want them to succeed, and they're not going to hold their punches. But yeah, when your character dies, the DM isn't going to smirk in triumph. He's going to feel that pain and that loss of that character with you guys, having recruited you from a little, level 1 Magi-Knight to, wherever you died. But it's been a journey, and you have social points with the Herald, and, you have experiences to share. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me was making sure that I felt included in the story, because, the DMs, we weave the story, but we are a part of the story. And it's not just for the players, it's for everyone at the table. And for the person who's doing the brunt of the work and the research and the preparation, 6-10 hours of prep for 1 to 2 hours of game work, they need to be rewarded too, and they need to feel satisfied. So I think the inclusion of the Herald really brings that to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And heralding success and all the sort of the hard work you put into it. When we'll be able to get our hands on the full finished version? It's fully funded on Kickstarter. There's a supplement version available on drive-through, but when does the print come out, or the final version?
So it's scheduled for the PDF to come out in April of 2023, so next year. And we're still on track for that right now. So we're actually going to be handing it off to the editor at the end of this month. And then the next step after that is the layout design, and then on to printing after that. So as long as there's no delays in any of that, we'll still be on track. And then the print version should be arriving at everybody's doorsteps in July. So hopefully everything goes according to plan still. I'm super happy that we're still on track for the artwork and for balancing rules and everything else we've added in from stretch goals right now. So.
Yeah, it's been you can check out the free, version that we released
before the Kickstarter.
I think it's like version 2.2. 2.2. We're on version 4.5 now, but it'll give you at least an idea of what you're getting into before you purchase the game, before you pre-order it. And we always give our backers the most up-to-date version that we have. And we're just really excited to know that, we've done all this contracting work working with how many different artists?
I think it's 15 now.
Yeah, upwards of 15.
Maybe more.
Probably more. I think that sounds a little low, but 15 more artists with, all of our other people we've contracted out. And the fact that we're still on schedule is just really amazing, with all these moving parts.
So with everything, all your sort of heart and soul, no pun intended, poured into this current project that's fantastic artwork and things, is there anything you've got on the horizon, maybe niggling the back of your minds, or projects in place that you're going to move on to next that we can expect further down the line for yourselves?
Well, I actually wrote a children's book that will soon be available for purchase called My Dad the Game Master. It's about a girl and her game master dad, and how he's a little different from other dads because of him being a game master. And it's just a fun little book for parents and kids to enjoy together and their kids. I'm just self-publishing it on Amazon, but I'm fixing some issues with it really quick before it's ready. But and then we want to expand on Magi-Knights a bit by having miniatures and dice and other products like that. You want to add?
Yeah, so I had originally 2 episodes written out for playtesting, but we decided that we would change the episode order a bit, and so I asked Kira to write the first episode. So she wrote, as I mentioned, episode 1, An Echo from the Stars, and I kind of helped transform it into a free scenario. So you're able to get that for free to kind of help introduce you and your players to that game. And we've had a lot of success with it on the server, through play-by-post, and through the streamers, and at our own table. And there are going to be 9 additional episodes for 10 episodes in total. And these episodes are basically scenarios. So there will be, let's see, I think three story arcs, which are a combination of 3 episodes.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
then anything that takes a character from 1 to our maximum level of 15 is called a saga. And so we will have a published saga. And our goal is to continue to release these episodes and the saga until it's all complete. And each iteration will have new expansion material, new tactics, new abilities. We've had a lot of requests for merchandise, especially of Kyrix.
Yeah, people want a plushie of him.
Everybody wants a Kyrix plushie,
Nice.
so we're gonna look into that. Yeah. We have a release coming up on Foundry, so that you're able to play that online virtual tabletop. We're working on expanding our distribution so that it's easier to find the game overseas and locally. In case you did miss the Kickstarter. Ultimately, I would love to make a platform for player-created content. We have a lot of passionate people in the community who want to write or have written even their own kind of one-shot scenarios, episodes where the team investigates a mystery within the city, and we just love to share the love of the Magi-Knights out there with those people who are interested in creating more content for the game. And I think lastly for Magi-Knights, we are working on translating it into Japanese to get into the Japanese market coming up in 2023-ish. So
yeah, maybe near the end.
So we're slated to meet with a few people, and we've got a translator on board who's ready to work on it as soon as the final version of the English copy is done. So
That's amazing.
And Derek actually starting to design starting to, I guess, design a board game that's also a role-playing game that's a different genre.
Right. And after the dust kind of settles with Magi-Knights, and it's kind of I would like to keep working on additional products for the Magi-Knight project, creating an RPG board game that incorporates digital media for record keeping that can be played solo or with friends. That's kind of just really in the R&D phase right now, but so many ideas, so many things are on my mind, just making them come to reality. I think that's our big push forward.
It all sounds like amazing, to be fair. Plushes, it's great. Your book, Kira, and all the supplements and all the accessories and things you bring. If you send me the links when they come out, I will add them into the description below this podcast so people can follow the links to the games or your website or wherever it is, or if they want specific products. Your book, for example, I will happily put that link down in the description below if you want me to in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate that a lot.
No, not at all. Not at all. So we have discussed a lot. We've discussed how you yourselves got into TTRPGs, the founding of this 5e based game you've created, influences, future projects and things. Is there anything that we haven't discussed through the course of this interview that you would like to bring up here at the end?
What do you think, Karen? For me, I'm going to say the biggest surprise was the lore. Originally, I kind of just made it a small section. I thought people would be interested in these team mechanics, but not necessarily the lore of the world. But it's been a pleasant surprise to see how many people have bought into it. What is elsewhere, and the spectral outsiders that live there? How do they come into our world, and why only during these times of days? And if they kidnap these people, what happens to them? And what do you mean they don't kill people necessarily? They just kidnap people and they're gone forever? And why aren't there more people concerned about these disappearances? What do you mean the black wind makes people forget about forgotten missing persons and such? And so having all these questions on the server and all this vested interest has just been really fun. And which is why we expanded on the lore and monster section quite a bit.
And the Herald, I requested the Herald section be expanded because I love the Heralds. I think they're so fun. But I love on our Discord server how if somebody asks a question about the lore, all of a sudden like 5 or 6 people will jump in and be like, oh, what about this? And then we'll all go back and forth discussing it. And
Yeah.
it just makes me so happy. I'm like, oh, I never expected this kind of reaction to something that we created. So
Yeah. Or even having people answer other questions about the lore or game mechanics.
yeah,
You
when
know,
they know it
yeah.
just as well as we do, makes
Yeah.
me happy too.
It's really awesome. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're accessible. And if you throw in a question, I'll generally get to it, you know, within that day. But sometimes it's nice to know that there are other gamers out there who are like, oh, yeah, it plays like this. And, but there definitely is a connection to us as the game designers, and you know, any qualms or advice, some things you'd like to see about the game, you know, we're always there to listen. We don't always implement it, of course, because we do have a what we want to see the project become, but we always take feedback with.
Of course.
Yeah, we've actually implemented a lot that was user feedback, so
Yeah.
we've appreciated it a lot.
Yeah.
Nice. It sounds like you have an amazing community, and one that clearly, you know, people, including myself, will look to join and learn more about the game and the system and yourselves as everything develops together in that respect. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'd love to have you remind everybody where they can find you on social media, so they can you know, scroll down or either go and find you having listened, or scroll down and follow the links below. So please, where can we find you on social media?
So it's just our Instagram is Magi_Knights, and same thing with our Twitter. Our Facebook, I don't know what that is, but I can send you the link to that page because it's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And
Yeah.
then we also could give you a link to our Discord server as well.
Yeah, in our Kickstarter, you could just Magi-Knight, Magi-Knights Kickstarter, and it's the first one that comes up.
Amazing.
Yeah, I believe our social media links are on there as well, too.
Yeah.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to speak with you about your work, your influences, your inspirations, and everything to do with Magi-Knights and the future that the pair of you have sort of plotted out, as it were. So thank you so much for coming. I'd love to get you back on the show if you'd be willing to join me again as more things are released or the story develops, as it were. If you'd be willing to come back.
Absolutely. We'd love to. Yeah, we'd love to come back. It's been
thank
a
you.
great opportunity. So thank you for having us.
Yes,
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
We've enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter @ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon. And we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review, because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.